The wind roared through the trees, bending their branches like brittle bones. Rain fell in thick sheets, drumming against the forest floor, soaking the earth until it became an ocean of mud. The night was alive with the chaos of the storm. Leaves torn from their roots, water rushing through hidden gullies, distant thunder rolling like a giant's footsteps in the sky. And in the heart of the storm, curled up beneath the twisted roots of an ancient oak, lay a tiny, trembling figure. A puppy. Alone. Afraid. His fur, soaked and clinging to his frail frame, barely offered any warmth against the biting cold. His small body trembled violently, his ribs faintly visible beneath his thin coat. His eyes, wide, fearful, searching, blinked against the rain, looking for something, someone, but there was no one. No mother. No pack. No home. Only darkness. The storm drowned out his whimpers, swallowed the tiny sound of his cries. He lifted his head, ears twitching at the unfamiliar surroundings. The towering trees stretched endlessly in every direction, their silhouettes jagged against the night sky. Everything smelled strange, damp earth, rotting leaves, and something else. Something dangerous. His stomach twisted with hunger, a deep, aching pain gnawing at his insides. It had been too long since he had eaten. Too long since he had felt the warmth of a mother's body beside him. His legs were too weak to carry him far. He did not understand how he had come to be here. Had he wandered too far from safety? Had he been left behind? Had he ever belonged to someone at all? The thought did not stay long. Hunger and exhaustion replaced it, forcing his body to curl in on itself, his small frame pressing deeper into the tangled roots. But the night was not merciful. A distant sound made his ears flick. Low, guttural, almost swallowed by the rain. A growl. The kind of sound that even a tiny, inexperienced puppy understood. Danger. His body stiffened, his heart hammering against his fragile ribs. The wind carried new scents, thick, musky, foreign. He did not know what it was, but instinct screamed at him to stay still. Something moved in the darkness. Slow, deliberate steps pressing into the mud. Closer. His breath hitched. He forced himself to remain frozen, his body tense beneath the roots, his tiny paws digging into the damp earth. Another growl, closer now. The storm had hidden him, but only for so long. The creature's breath was heavy, wet, sniffing at the air. Then, silence. Seconds passed. A minute. The sounds of movement faded. He was alone again. For now. The puppy's muscles remained locked in place, his breathing shallow. The rain continued to fall, but it no longer masked the sounds of the forest around him. He was not safe. Not yet. And this was only the beginning. By morning, the storm had passed. The sky was a pale, muted gray, streaked with the fading remnants of thunderclouds. The trees, still dripping with rain, stood like towering sentinels over the endless stretch of wilderness. Mist curled around their trunks, slithering across the ground like silent phantoms. The puppy stirred. His body ached, his tiny legs stiff from the cold. Hunger gnawed at his insides, sharper than before. His fur, still damp, clung to his frame, offering little protection from the chill. But the world was quiet now. He lifted his head, ears perked, listening. No growls. No heavy footsteps in the mud. No rustling in the underbrush. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was nothing but silence. His body remained curled beneath the roots for a moment longer, as if waiting for the world to prove that it was safe. Then, slowly, cautiously, he unfolded his legs. His first step was hesitant, his tiny paw sinking into the soft, rain-soaked earth. He paused, ears twitching, nose lifting to sniff at the air. The scents were overwhelming. Earthy. Damp. Wild. He did not recognize them. They did not belong to a home. They did not belong to warmth. They belonged to the unknown. His legs wobbled beneath him, still weak from hunger, but he forced himself forward. Another step. Then another. A branch snapped in the distance. He froze. His heart pounded. His body tensed, prepared to flee. But nothing came. He exhaled slowly, then took another step. The forest stretched before him, vast and endless. The towering trees blocked out the sky, their thick branches tangled together like an ancient fortress. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth, rotting wood, and something unfamiliar. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cawed. Another answered. The puppy's ears flicked toward the sound, his body still, his mind uncertain. He had two choices. Stay. Hide. Wait for something, someone, to find him. Or move. Search. Survive. The decision was made for him when his stomach let out a deep, hollow growl. He needed food. And food would not come to him. He took another step. Then another. His tiny body moved forward, paws pressing into the damp earth, leaving small imprints in the mud. The first steps of a journey he did not yet understand. A journey that would last 30 days. A journey of hunger. A journey of survival. A journey that would test every instinct buried within his small, fragile body. And one that would change everything. The morning light filtered weakly through the canopy above, casting dappled shadows along the forest floor. The air was damp, thick with the scent of wet leaves and moss. The storm had left its mark, branches snapped in half, pools of water gathering in uneven pockets of earth. The puppy moved through it all, each step cautious, hesitant. His hunger had dulled his fear, but not completely. His body remained tense, his ears alert. He did not know what he was looking for. All he knew was that he needed something. Anything. A beetle skittered across the wet leaves. His eyes followed it, his nose twitching at the unfamiliar scent. His stomach twisted painfully. Food. He pounced. His tiny teeth snapped down, crushing the insect between his jaws. The taste was bitter, foreign, but his body did not care. He swallowed, his throat constricting as the small meal slid down. It was not enough. Not nearly enough. But it was something. He licked his lips, nose twitching at the air once more. There had to be more. The second lesson. Survival is not about what you want. It is about what you need. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the thick curtain of trees, the world existed. A world of warm beds and full bellies. A world of gentle hands and kind voices. A world this puppy had never truly known. For 30 days, he would fight. For 30 days, he would face hunger, cold, fear, and the unknown. But what he did not know, what he could not have imagined, was that his journey was far from hopeless. Because somewhere, beyond the trees, beyond the fear, beyond the struggle, someone was waiting. Someone who would change his fate forever. This was only the beginning. If you believe in the power of second chances, stay with me until the end. Because what happens next will change everything. The puppy took another shaky step. His small body wobbled, exhausted from the storm, from the hunger, from the fear that clung to him like a shadow. The world around him was foreign, towering trees stretching toward the sky, their thick trunks covered in moss, their tangled roots twisting along the earth like sleeping serpents. The ground beneath his tiny paws was soft and wet, the remnants of the storm soaking into the earth, leaving behind the fresh scent of rain. But there was something else in the air. Something unfamiliar. It was not the comforting scent of home. Not the warm smell of food, of blankets, of safety. It was wild. Untamed. And for the first time, the puppy understood. He was alone. His belly ached. Hunger gnawed at his insides, twisting, demanding, pleading. He let out a soft whimper, but there was no one to hear it. He sniffed the air, searching for something, anything, that smelled of food. His tiny nose twitched, but all he found were the damp scents of earth and wood. His legs trembled. He could not stay here. He had to move. The first steps of survival were always the hardest. But he took them anyway. The world had stretched into endless green. Trees. Leaves. Shadows. Everywhere he turned, it was the same. His paws were raw, scraped from the rough terrain. His fur, once soft, was now tangled with dirt and debris. His tiny body had lost the warmth of whatever comfort it once knew. And worst of all, he was starving. The hunger was different now. It was no longer just a dull ache in his belly. It was sharp, deep, unrelenting. His legs shook with every step. His vision blurred at the edges, his breath shallow and weak. And then, movement. Something small, crawling across a damp leaf. A beetle. His nose twitched. It was food. Not the food he wanted. Not the warm milk he once knew. But his instinct screamed louder than his hesitation. He lunged. His teeth snapped down, crunching the insect in his mouth. The taste was bitter, the texture strange, but his body did not care. He swallowed. His stomach clenched around the tiny meal. But it was not enough. Not even close. But it was something. The second lesson. Survival is not about what you want. It is about what you need. The night was alive with sound. Rustling leaves. Distant howls. The quiet hum of insects weaving their song into the darkness. The puppy did not sleep. He lay curled beneath a fallen log, his small body trembling, his ears perked at every sound. He was being watched. He did not know by what. But he knew he was not alone. Something lurked in the shadows, just beyond the reach of his sight. He could hear it, the soft crunch of leaves, the subtle shift of weight against the earth. Waiting. Watching. The puppy pressed himself deeper into the hollow of the log, willing himself to disappear. The forest was full of dangers. And he was one of the smallest things in it. He did not know how long he lay there, frozen in fear, his tiny heart hammering in his chest. But eventually, the footsteps faded. The night swallowed them whole. And the puppy learned his third lesson. The forest does not forgive the weak. By the 7th day, his legs were weaker. His ribs pressed against his thinning skin. And then, he saw it. A carcass. Small. Still. A bird, its feathers scattered by the wind. Food. His paws moved before his mind could stop them. He crept forward, lowering his head, his stomach twisting in painful anticipation. And then, a growl. Low. Warning. His body locked in place. His ears flicked toward the sound, and his eyes caught the movement. A fox. Bigger. Stronger. And it wanted the same meal. The puppy's heart pounded. His instinct screamed at him to run. But if he ran, he would lose the food. And if he lost the food, he would not survive. For the first time, he bared his tiny teeth. A soft, trembling growl escaped his throat. The fox stepped forward. Then, snap! A branch fell from above. The fox's ears flicked toward the sound. A second of hesitation. A second was all the puppy needed. He lunged forward, grabbed the bird in his mouth, and ran. Branches whipped against his face. His tiny legs burned. He ran until the fox's scent was far behind him. Only then did he stop. The third lesson. Fear is not an enemy. It is a weapon. And today, he had learned to use it. The sky had turned grey. The air was thick with something heavy, something electric. The rain returned. But this time, it was not just rain. The ground, once solid beneath his paws, turned to mud. The wind howled through the trees, bending them, shaking them. And then, the river came. It was not there before. But now, it was everywhere. Water surged through the forest, swallowing the earth, twisting through the trees. The puppy ran. But the ground crumbled beneath him. And the river swallowed him whole. He kicked. He gasped. He fought against the pull of the current. But the river did not care. It dragged him, twisted him, forced him under. His vision blurred. His lungs burned. And then, a branch. Jutting out from the water. With the last of his strength, he reached. His teeth clamped down. And the world stopped spinning. The fourth lesson. Sometimes, survival is not about running. It is about holding on. 30 days. He had survived the impossible. And then, he heard it. A voice. Not the growl of a predator. Not the whisper of the wind. A human. His ears perked. His body froze. He had learned to fear what he did not understand. But something in that voice, something warm, something gentle, made his tail wag. He took a step forward. Then another. Through the trees, he saw her. A girl. Kneeling, arms open. "Hey there, little one," she whispered. Her voice was soft. Safe. For the first time in 30 days, the puppy ran toward something instead of away. And for the first time, he was not afraid. The world had changed. For 30 days, the puppy had lived in the wild, where hunger ruled his body, fear guided his steps, and survival was the only law. He had known nothing but the vast, endless forest, where the trees whispered secrets, the shadows hid dangers, and the nights stretched longer than they should. But now, there was warmth. Now, there was safety. Now, there was a home. The girl carried him gently, wrapping his small body in a thick, warm blanket. The scent of fabric was unfamiliar, but it was soft, comforting. He did not struggle. His instincts told him that he no longer had to run. She whispered soothing words, stroking his head, letting her fingers run through the tangled mess of his fur. It was the first time in a long time that a touch did not feel like a threat. He did not flinch. He simply let it happen. Her home was bright, warm. It smelled different from the forest, clean, safe, filled with things he did not recognize. Soft cushions, wooden floors, glowing lights that did not flicker like fire but burned steady, casting a golden hue over everything. A small bowl of food was placed in front of him. His nose twitched at the scent, fresh, rich, unlike anything he had ever known. His stomach clenched in anticipation. But he hesitated. For 30 days, food had meant a fight. A battle against hunger, against others, against the very world itself. But now, there was no growling fox. No wind stealing his scent. No fight. Just a girl. Watching him. Waiting. Her eyes held no threat. No hunger of her own. Only kindness. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped forward. His nose touched the food, warm and inviting. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped forward. His nose touched the food, warm and inviting. Then, for the first time in 30 days, he ate without fear. When he woke, he did not wake in panic. He did not jolt upright, ears straining for danger. He did not check the air for the scent of predators, did not feel the cold bite of wind against his fur. He was safe. The girl sat near him, watching. She smiled. A sound, light, soft, full of something he did not understand. But it made the air feel warm. She spoke to him, words he could not comprehend, but something in her voice made his tail twitch, just slightly, just enough. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar. Something new. Something like belonging. The first steps were small. The girl did not force him. She let him move at his own pace. She let him sniff the corners of his new world, let him test the floor beneath his paws, let him learn that this place did not shift beneath him like wet earth, did not hide unseen dangers like the wild. She gave him time. She gave him space. She gave him trust. And slowly, he began to return it. When she reached out, he did not shy away. When she spoke, he listened. When she left the room, he waited for her to return. Because now, he knew she would. No one had ever come back for him before. But she did. Every time. The door opened. The outside world lay beyond it. For a moment, panic flared in his chest. Outside was danger. Outside was hunger. Outside was cold and storms and endless nights. But the girl did not let go of him. She stayed beside him. She held a strange thing, soft, wrapped around his body. A leash. A connection. She stepped forward, just slightly. And then, she looked at him, waiting. It was a choice. And for the first time, he chose to follow. Step by step, the world outside was no longer an enemy. The grass beneath his paws was different from the tangled, unforgiving forest floor. The sky above stretched wide, not blocked by endless branches. The wind carried new scents, fresh, clean, without the heavy weight of rain or danger. He lifted his head, breathed. And it did not smell like fear. For the first time, the outside world was not something to escape. It was something to explore. With her. The ball rolled across the yard. He watched it, uncertain. The girl knelt beside him, tapping it with her fingers, nudging it closer. It was not food. It was not a threat. It was just a thing. She rolled it again. This time, something inside him twitched, something buried beneath the weight of 30 days of survival. Something old. Something forgotten. His paws moved before he understood why. The ball bounced against them. Something light bloomed in his chest. A sound came from him, something he had not heard in a long time. A bark. Not a warning. Not a cry for help. Just a bark. A playful sound. A sound of life. And the girl laughed. And for the first time, he understood. Laughter was warmth. Laughter was safety. Laughter was home. The girl had been calling him something. A sound, over and over. It was soft, short, filled with warmth when she said it. She pointed to him. Said it again. Scout. He tilted his head. It was different from any sound he had known before. Not the growl of an enemy. Not the whisper of the wind. Not the empty silence of the nights he had spent alone. It was his. It was his name. She said it again. And something inside him settled. Because now, he was not just a survivor. He was someone. Nights were no longer endless. Food was no longer a battle. The outside world was no longer a threat. And for the first time in his life, he understood something new. Something that had nothing to do with hunger or survival or fear. Love. Love was soft hands stroking his fur. Love was warm blankets wrapped around him at night. Love was laughter, was safety, was a voice calling his name. Love was home. And Scout was home now. Forever. If you have ever witnessed or experienced something like this, share your story below. Your words can inspire someone today. And if you believe in second chances, subscribe. Because every life deserves one.